Hey everyone, Rob here. Today we're going to be talking about logging in Corepunk. So we've already made a broader profession guide which covers quite a bit more than what we're going to talk about in here overall. But I wanted to make a specific logging guide, and there may be a bit of crossover between some of what you see here and what you see in the other video. I'll link the other video in the description for you to check out because I think there'll be some useful stuff in there. We're not going to go over everything about gathering in general in this video. That's more for the other video. We're going to talk just about the specifics to logging here. So to just start off with all of these professions, you don't need any sort of special tools to go out into the wilderness and gather, right? So you can basically just get you can just spawn into the game basically, and the moment you find a tree, you can cut it down as long as it's tier 1, because that's what you start at. You start at tier 1, and that brings us to the mastery levels, which are very simple. Basically, as you go and you cut down trees, you're going to gain experience, which is proportional to the rarity of the mats that you gain from cutting down the tree, and eventually you will gain mastery levels. So you'll go from newbie to journeyman to craftsman, and this allows you at first to have tier 1 resource nodes, then you can farm tier 2, and then you can farm tier 3, right? And pretty simple, pretty standard. This is how all MMOs work. The one thing we want to differentiate from right away, though, when we start coming down here, is that the tier of the resource node is very different from the type of the resource node. So every gathering profession in this game has 3 types of resource node, and then there's also 3 tiers of each type. So as you can see, we have stonebark, wood trees, and magic trees. These are the 3 different types, not to be confused with the tiers. So this doesn't go like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It's more that if you can see that these are changing right now, that's because it's going through the different tiers within its respective type. So I'll wait for it to kind of like reset again and show you. So we have faint petrified, standard petrified, and then overflowing petrified. Faint petrified, standard petrified, overflowing petrified. And these basically get larger to demonstrate that there's more of the resource there to be had. It's kind of like the idea. The same thing works with the wood trees. We have faint timberheart, prosperous timberheart, and then rich timberheart, right? And then you'll notice that these have like prefixes, and this is just magic tree, old magic tree, ancient magic tree, right? So where these have like very, very similar prefixes, right? The faint, prosperous, standard, rich, overflowing, a lot of similar terms being used. And that's because this is the special resource, and these are what I would call the standard resources. And what do I mean by that, right? So we'll kind of get into that down below. You can see that if we go to the materials that you can get from the trees, right, it tells us like which tree gives which material. And as you can see, if we go to the stonebark trees, right, they only give stonebark and tree root. There's nothing else here that drops from the stonebark tree, and there's no higher tier of materials from the stonebark. So you only get tree root and stonebark itself from this tree. And it's the same thing with the wood trees. You only get heartwood, right, and wood. There's nothing else, basically, right? You can look, and there's nothing else from typical just wood trees. And that leaves us with the special mat tree, which is the one over here, the magic trees, right? And you'll see that there's a difference right away, right? Because all of these can be accessed by newbie, right? Which is the tier 1. Just like, again, like all of the wood that you get from this tree is newbie. All of the heartwood that you get it from it's newbie. All of the stonebark that you get from this is newbie. And all of the tree root that you get from is newbie, which means that no matter what tier the stonebark or the wood tree is, you're getting the same mats no matter what. Their mats don't go up with tier. It's just the amount of hits you get on the tree goes up, right? That's different for the magic trees over here, for the special resource nodes in each gathering profession, really. Because what this means is that you're getting the special resource at base here, right? The uncommon. But then as you go to the tier 2, the journeyman, you can now get a different type of resource that you couldn't get before from the tier 1s, which is the neon mushroom. And then you can get the blood honey from tier 3, which you couldn't get from tier 2 or lower, right? Now, something to keep in mind is just because you hit a tier 3 node, or a tier 3 like ancient tree, or a tier 2 magic tree, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to get the neon mushroom or the blood honey, or that you even have a chance to get them. What do I mean by that, right? Well, there's another aspect that comes into play, which is the efficiency score. So think of efficiency as like a pie in this game, like a pie chart, and you have 100% of it, and you can spread it out between your 4 professions. But it can only be 100% at any given time, right? Which means if you put 100% into logging, you now have 0% to distribute in other areas. If you put 50% into logging, you can put 50% somewhere else, or you can break that 50% down however much you want across the remaining 3 professions. But basically, as you can see here, looking at the efficiency thing, in order to get the epic resources, you actually need 100% efficiency in a given gathering profession, which means that in order to actually obtain this blood honey, you need to not only hit a tier 3 magic tree specifically, right, but you also have to have 100 proficiency, or else you'll get nothing. If you had like 40 proficiency in woodcutting, right, and you try and hit a tier 3 magic tree, you'll be able to hit the magic tree, assuming you have the proper level, right? You're at craftsman, so you can actually hit tier 3 resource nodes that allow you to hit it, but you won't be able to access the epic resource from it. And that's the same thing with the rare resource as well. I believe this threshold is actually 60%. So, yeah, you'll need to be at least 60% invested into that efficiency in order to get the neon mushroom to drop from the tier 2 nodes. And obviously neon mushroom can also drop from tier 3 nodes, and all of these nodes can drop the tier 1 mat, which are the greens right here, right? You're predominantly still going to get the greens. So with that being said and explained, it is time to point out where the trees are, right? So there's trees basically everywhere on the map. You'll see a bunch of trees like on the map here, but these are not all trees that can be farmed. It's not like New World or something like that. There's a bunch of trees on the map still, though, that can be farmed in these areas. They're kind of just blended in, right? So they're not actually marked on the map or anything. A lot of these are just like the cosmetic trees, but there will be like trees that you can cut down amongst them. So I think a good place to start doing trees is around like a little bit north of the town, a little bit northwest. So kind of like in this area. And then this area as well has a decent amount of lower level trees that are surrounded by mobs in some cases that aren't very high level, or in some cases they're away from mobs entirely, right? This forest over here, like the dead looking forest, it's actually a great place for the ancient trees, as well as the other types of trees as well. But the thing about it is it's filled with like really dangerous mobs, like wolves and stuff like that, with huge aggro radiuses. So it can be a bit difficult to really kind of like navigate this as a very low level player. And there's also a lot of higher level nodes here, like tier 2, tier 3 nodes. So if you're just starting out, especially, it's going to be really hard to hit those. And you're kind of going to be wasting those nodes. And keep in mind that like, if you can't put a node on reset, another node is not going to spawn, right? So it actually inhibits your ability to gather. Most likely, based on how we'd probably imagine the gathering to work in the game, to not be able to like take all the nodes in an area, right? Because it's going to affect how the nodes respawn, basically. So again, higher level trees over here. I would start over here. And then another good place to honestly do trees is like the very north part of this, like right where I'm circling, right above this little exclamation point. And then if you go deep into the northern forest here, there's actually quite a few trees and some good magic trees and stuff like that. So this is actually not a bad area to farm. Also, there's a decent amount like around these lakes over here, in particular this lake. But I think if I really wanted a high density of magic trees, I would still go over here. It's just that there is more forgiving mobs, generally speaking, in kind of this area. And in some cases, you can even farm the trees pretty much uncontested from mobs or anything like that. So, yeah, that is basically the tree breakdown. And thank you guys very much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next video.